But this man's faith was above and beyond, and this man's suffering is greater than anyone I've ever met. He was my driver, and he's Muslim. My journey started off, interestingly, I had taken a year off work. I got injured at work and I wasn't able to work. And part of that recovery and getting me back to work meant weekly visits for treatment. And there was a gentleman from Morocco who was my driver, and he's Muslim. And just through having conversations with him, he's a chef, an extraordinary chef, and he never spoke to me about Islam, but he showed me in so many ways the kindness and the generosity and the values that are Islam. And some days he would drop off on my doorstep things for self-care, things to look after myself, either cooking. He would drop me off a coffee. He would drop me off things to do hammam. And even when his family came here, his family bought me things as well. Just really kind, thoughtful, generous people with the most extraordinary ethics. And it impacted me greatly. When I went back to work, with everything happening in Gaza, and my background is foreign aid and community development, I started collecting medical supplies that I could send over, and that is still ongoing, and I hope to go over there myself at some point. Through that, I have a colleague who I hadn't seen in the time that I had been off, and he and his wife were Muslim. And it was so great to see him. And when I saw him, I asked, how are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm great, I'm fine. But it wasn't a how you're doing, as in, like, how's the weather? It was a genuine and sincere, like, how are you? And in that moment, he just took a breath, and we had an incredible conversation. And shortly after then, I had a patient. He's probably one of the most extraordinary gentlemen that I have ever met. His courage and kindness and peace, and above all, his faith. I don't try not to get emotional, but impacted me immensely. And it was through his contact with me that I thought, what is this faith? It's so different from my own. I was raised Christian. My mother was Church of England. My father is Protestant. But this man's faith was above and beyond. And he suffered. You know, we speak of sabr, and this man's suffering is greater than anyone I've ever met. And yet, his peace and his kindness and his strength and devoutness in his faith was so present to me that I had to look into it further. And he is one of the biggest reasons for me buying a Quran and starting this journey. And I'm so grateful. When I spoke to my colleague, and I paged him and I said, if you're free, pop by at some point to have something to talk to you about. And when I showed him the copy that I had of the Quran that I was taking to work to read on my breaks, he was quite emotional, and it took me aback. He's a wonderful man. And he pulled me aside so we could have a conversation. He said how this was important and how he wanted to be there. He and his wife was a support for me if ever I needed anything. And I was so touched. And he was quite emotional, and then I got quite emotional. I didn't expect that. And I'm so grateful for him for that, and for his wife. They've been extraordinary. I've certainly had challenges on the way, but I've had so many blessings. When I told my father, I didn't know what to expect, but my father and I were very close. And when I told him that I was going to be Muslim, he was quite emotional. And it took me aback. And he was quite emotional. I didn't expect that. And I'm so grateful for him for that, and for his wife. They've been extraordinary. I've certainly had challenges on the way, but I've had so many blessings. When I told my father, I didn't know what to expect, but my father and I were very close. And I'm so grateful that he said, I support you 100%. I live in a community that is a large, new community. And I could probably count on one hand the amount of times that I've seen somebody wearing a hijab. And putting on a hijab wasn't a difficult decision for me. I'm covered at work most of the time. I wear scrubs and I wear a medical scrub cap. I realize the significance of a hijab is completely different, but I'm used to being covered. But now I'm covered for a very different reason. And I have not worn my hijab for work yet. I have to take into consideration that we work with patients who can be, and I need to be safe. So the hijabs that I need to wear to work need to be something that can release quite quickly if someone were to take it upon themselves to grab my hijab, and it's highly likely. I know when I present myself at work, it may pose some issues with distrust and judgment, but I'm ready for that. I'm ready for that, and I'm ready to have those conversations if need be. And it's an exciting journey, and it's a humbling journey. I feel so grateful. It's taken so many years of my life to get to this point. When I discussed with my friend, who was the chef, that I was going to be taking my shahada, he was blown away, he was taken aback. He's back in Morocco right now, and he was quite surprised. But he said one of the kindest things possibly anyone has ever said to me, and he said, you embody the values of Islam. You always have, you have since the day that I met you. You're just formalizing it. It's probably one of the best comments I've ever had.